Well, every once in a while you come across someone who just understands the big picture. We've got that tonight with Greg Braden, author of The Divine Matrix, The Science of Miracles as well. We're going to talk with Greg about bridging time, space, miracles, and belief. I'm looking forward to this. He's next on Coast to Coast. A little bit of Greg Braden's background for you. A former senior computer systems designer for Martin Marietta Aerospace. He was a computer geologist for Phillips Petroleum, technical operations manager for Cisco Systems. And Greg is considered as a pioneer in bridging the wisdom of our past with science, healing, and peace of our future. For at least 20 years, probably more than that, Greg has searched high mountain villages, remote monasteries, forgotten texts to uncover their timeless secrets. Now, to date, his work has led to such paradigm-shattering books, The Isaiah Effect, The God Code, The Divine Matrix, Bridging Time, Space, Miracles, and Belief. He's come out with a new DVD series, of course, called The Science of Miracles. And we're going to talk with him about miracles and about the science behind it right now. And here he is, Greg Braden. Hey, Greg, the clock is just ticking. What's happening? Slow it down.
Hey, well, we were listening just before this program came on, and I heard your announcement that your contract's been extended until the end of time. So I'm going to say congratulations on that as well.
Yeah, just my luck for the end of time to be next week. But no, it's we're really happy with this. And
congratulations. We're lucky to have you, George, and I'm just thrilled to hear that. So that is the context within which we're looking at the science. Some of the science, George, is so new it hasn't made it into the textbooks yet, and many of the discoveries are validating some of our most ancient and cherished spiritual traditions, the very traditions that were lost and edited from Western culture 1,700 years ago, but they've been preserved in some of the most pristine monasteries in some of the most remote parts of the world. And when we factor these discoveries into our time in history, George, it changes everything. So the reason I'm excited, and you can tell I'm excited about tonight, is because what we're going to talk about over these next couple of hours is so fundamental that there is nothing that any guest could bring to this program that is not somehow impacted by the discussion we're going to have tonight.
Has science stumbled into this where, let's say, people who are experts in metaphysics knew this for years?
Well, I think what has happened is, first of all, I'm just going to preface this. I was trained in the hard sciences. I come from the world of science. I support the scientific method. And as good as science is, what we're going to talk about tonight, George, is a couple of assumptions that were made over 100 years ago. And science is only about 300 years old in terms of the scientific method.
Right.
So we accept science as beginning around the time of when Newton formalized the laws of physics. That's when we say science actually began. Well, about 100 years ago, a series of experiments were conducted to settle the argument as to whether or not there's a field of energy that connects everything and whether or not we're connected with that field. The results of those experiments, in my opinion, were poorly interpreted, and they have set us on a false course, false assumptions in science that have led us into a series of dead ends and up against the brick wall in trying to explain the universe and the way we work within the universe. So the first false assumption, I'll say it right now, the first false assumption is that the space between things is empty. We now know that's absolutely not true. And the second false assumption is that our inner experiences, what we call thought, feeling, emotion, and belief, have no effect on the world beyond our bodies. And I'll tell you, nothing could be further from the truth. And this is what the new discoveries are showing us, and this is what changes everything.
Why is it important for us to grasp the fact that there may be things between spaces?
If in the assumption, first of all, we'll go back. The experiments that were conducted in the late 1800s, the very famous Michealson MORELY experiment, was conducted in 1887 publicly. What a lot of people don't know is that it had already been conducted in 1881 privately. And both times, the scientists came up with the same results. and the results suggested that everything is separate from everything else. If there's nothing filling the empty space, in lay terms, it suggests that everything is separate from everything else, and for that reason, what happens in point A has no effect on what happens in point B. If it looks like it does, it's only a coincidence. And we have an entire civilization now built upon the belief that what we do in one place doesn't have an effect or doesn't make any difference on something that's happening somewhere else. And that false assumption has written us, humankind, right out of the equations of the universe and how things work, and it's been the stumbling block for what we're calling this unified field theory that is yet to come together. There's some promising foundations out there, like string theory, superstring theory, that have been around since the 80s, but we've got to ask if these theories are the right path, if they're putting us on the right path, and they've been around for 20-plus years with the best minds of our time working on them, and the best computing power we've ever had. Why are they still theories? Why have they failed to unify the forces of nature and provide a single story that explains the way the universe works and our role in the universe? And this is where everything's changing, George. This is why it's so exciting to be able to...
You know, Greg, we might not have enough time to figure that. We won't have the time to make the mistake to figure it out. I think the clock has really ticked beyond where we should be.
Well, I agree with you, George, that the clock is ticking very quickly. I'm going to share tonight there is a global project that has just come online early in this year, the 2008, that I'm going to be able to talk about tonight, that allows every one of our listeners to participate in not just watch, not just observe, and not just guess as to whether or not they're having an effect, but to know that they're literally having an effect upon the fields of the earth, upon fields that are called coherent fields of the earth, that affect everything from the peace between nations to the health of our bodies to our sleep patterns to our relationships. I'm very excited to be sharing this information tonight. So we're going to cover a lot of ground over these next couple of hours.
And is it our ability to tap into this that changes these things for the better for us?
Well, yes. The fact is that we all already tap into it. The key is to do so consistently, predictably, and in a way that allows us to create the conditions in our lives that we're choosing to help us to become better people and have a better world. That's the bottom line to this ancient traditions that I'll be talking about that we found practiced in the monasteries and in the mountains of Egypt and the highlands of central China and Tibet. And now our own science is bearing out the very principles that have been preserved in these ancient wisdom traditions in non-scientific ways. So we walk into a monastery in the highlands of central China, and the monks aren't talking about quantum fields and holographic, experiences. What they do is they giggle, because to them this is so basic. They giggle and they say, this is the way you work, and this is the way your world works. And when we marry the wisdom that's been preserved in some of these remote and pristine, magnificent temples and monasteries and in some of the hardest to get to parts of the world, we marry what's been preserved there with what the best science of our time is now telling us. What I believe we're finding, we're building for ourselves a spiritually based science that for some people sounds like an oxymoron, but I believe that this spiritually based science will meet the challenges that we're talking about tonight. And George, while